Most American car companies didn't fail because they lacked ambition. They failed because ambition alone was never enough to survive Detroit. Yet in the years immediately after World War II, one company believed timing mattered more than size and speed mattered more than legacy. That company was Kaiser-Frazer, an automaker that appeared almost overnight, challenged the most powerful industrial giants in America, and for a brief moment convinced the public that Detroit could actually be beaten at its own game. To understand how Kaiser-Frazer rose so quickly, you have to understand the America it was born into. During World War II, the United States completely shut down civilian automobile production. From 1942 onward, no new passenger cars could legally be sold. Factories that once produced sedans and coupes were transformed into weapons plants, building tanks, bombers, ammunition, and military vehicles. Gasoline was rationed, speed limits were reduced, and citizens were encouraged to carpool as a patriotic duty. Americans were forced to keep aging pre-war cars running far longer than usual, creating a massive invisible pressure in the market. By the time the war ended, millions of people were desperate for new cars, and demand was guaranteed for anyone who could build one. While Detroit's Big Three were still tied up converting their factories back from wartime production, a few outsiders saw an opening. If a company could be ready with a modern car the moment the ban was lifted, it wouldn't need a reputation or decades of history. It would simply need inventory. One of the men who understood this better than anyone was Henry J. Kaiser. Kaiser was not a car man, and he never pretended to be. He was a construction magnate, a shipbuilder, and a businessman famous for unconventional thinking. He had built an industrial empire by doing things faster and cheaper than competitors believed possible, and he was convinced the automobile industry could be treated the same way. What Kaiser lacked was automotive experience, and that gap was filled by Joseph Frazer. Frazer had spent his entire career inside the car industry. He had worked at General Motors, helped develop the military Jeep, and was currently leading the struggling Graham Page Company. Frazer understood manufacturing, supply chains, dealer networks, and most importantly, Detroit politics. When Kaiser and Frazer met near the end of the war, they immediately recognized that together they had what neither possessed alone. Kaiser had capital and confidence. Frazer had knowledge and connections. Within a week of their first meeting, they publicly announced the formation of a brand new American automaker. The task they set for themselves bordered on impossible. Starting a car company from scratch usually took years, but Kaiser and Frazer didn't have years. They leased a massive Willow Run factory, one of the largest industrial buildings in the world, previously used to assemble bomber aircraft. They ordered heavy stamping equipment, assembly lines, and paint facilities, essentially building an entire auto industry overnight. Yet even with all this infrastructure in place, they still faced the hardest challenge of all, designing a car that could actually be produced quickly and reliably. Ambitious ideas were considered and abandoned. Front-wheel drive, unibody construction, and all new engines were discussed, but time and cost forced compromises. Kaiser-Frazer settled on proven Continental six-cylinder engines, conservative mechanical layouts, and styling that prioritized simplicity over extravagance. What made the achievement remarkable was speed. From concept to production, the first Kaiser-Frazer car was developed in roughly 90 days, a process that normally took established automakers 3 to 4 years. When the cars finally appeared in 1946, the timing could not have been better. Detroit was still selling lightly updated pre-war designs, while Kaiser-Frazer's cars looked clean, modern, and forward-thinking. The company launched two brands using the same basic body, the more affordable Kaiser and the upscale Frazer. Both featured smooth envelope styling that eliminated separate fenders, a design trend that Detroit itself would soon follow. Interiors were another major advantage. At a time when most American cars were filled with dull colors and conservative materials, Kaiser-Frazer offered vibrant fabrics and bold combinations that made their cars feel fresh and optimistic. Sales surged. By 1948, Kaiser-Frazer was producing over 180,000 cars per year, an extraordinary figure for a company that barely existed 3 years earlier. For a brief moment, It appeared that an outsider had successfully disrupted the most powerful car industry in the world. But success created a new problem. Competition responded. By 1949, the Big Three unveiled all new models with modern styling, improved features, and most importantly, powerful V8 engines. Kaiser-Frazer's once modern sedans suddenly felt underpowered and outdated. Internal disagreements soon followed. Henry Kaiser believed the solution was volume. If the company built more cars, he believed, it would naturally sell more cars. Joseph Frazer disagreed. He argued that Kaiser-Frazer needed to slow down, invest heavily in research and development, and diversify its lineup to survive long term. Without new engines, new body styles, and a clear identity, Frazer believed the company would be crushed once Detroit fully recovered. Kaiser dismissed these concerns, and Frazer eventually left the company, leaving Kaiser alone in control. From that point forward, the company struggled to keep pace. Kaiser experimented with unconventional solutions, including a four-door convertible that suffered from serious structural issues, and a unique station wagon alternative known as the Traveler and Vagabond, featuring a two-piece tailgate that transformed into a loading platform. These ideas were clever, but they could not compensate for aging mechanical foundations. In an attempt to capture a new market, Kaiser launched the Henry J, a small economy car marketed as the modern equivalent of the Model T. Stripped down to reduce costs, it lacked features Americans increasingly expected, and sales remained disappointing, even after Kaiser partnered with Sears to sell rebadged versions through department stores. In the early 1950s, Kaiser attempted one final reinvention. New designs reintroduced bold styling concepts originally rejected for cost reasons, and the company introduced its now famous Dragon packages. These featured exotic interior materials, textured vinyl roofs in bold colors, and themed trim levels decades ahead of their time. Visually, Kaiser cars had never looked better. Mechanically, they were still falling behind. The gap between Kaiser and Detroit widened every year. Desperate to generate excitement, Kaiser entered the emerging sports car market with the Kaiser-Darrin. Featuring fiberglass construction and sliding doors that pushed occupants outward, it was one of the most unusual American cars ever built. Unfortunately, it was underpowered, expensive, and arrived just as buyers were losing confidence in Kaiser's future. Sales were poor, and by 1955, Henry Kaiser accepted the inevitable. Automobile production in the United States came to an end, leaving only the Jeep brand as a surviving asset. Kaiser-Frazer's story did not end entirely there. In Argentina, Kaiser established a second life, producing cars locally and helping build a national automotive industry. Kaiser vehicles remained in production there into the early 1960s, even serving as government limousines. But eventually, even that chapter closed, marking the final end of one of America's most ambitious automotive experiments. Kaiser-Frazer proved that Detroit could be challenged, but it also proved why Detroit was so difficult to defeat. Speed, creativity, and timing can open doors, but without sustained innovation and long-term planning, even the most promising newcomers eventually fall behind. Kaiser-Frazer arrived at exactly the right moment, changed American car design forever, and then disappeared almost as quickly as it came.